right, welcome back. So in this video, I'm going to be making a work table. Now, if you've got a workshop, a work table is pretty much a necessity. It doesn't matter what you're doing. It doesn't matter if you're restoring cars or if you're building furniture. You need some sort of a work surface, and a workbench just has its limitations. I used to have a work table here, but when I moved down to the new shop, it made the journey, and well, it never made it back. So it was a decent table. It served its purpose. It was a pretty good size. It was 3 foot wide, 5 foot long. It was on casters, which makes it really handy when you don't have a lot of space, which I don't. The legs were 4x4s. The perimeter of the top and the lower shelf were 2x4s. So structurally, it was pretty sound, but the top was OSB sheeting as well as the lower shelf. And for the most part, that wasn't an issue, but when you're doing restoration work and customization work, you get into a lot of metal shaping, metal forming, and that OSB was just a little too flimsy to be banging on sheet metal, you know. So when I was planning my new table, I decided I wanted to keep it that same size, the 3x5, and also wanted to keep it on casters. But I did want to make the top more sturdy, and I wanted to address the bottom shelf. The first table, the bottom shelf is the same size as the top. And if you were standing up next to it and working, that wasn't a problem. But when you pulled up a chair or a stool or something like that and you had to sit down while you were working, you didn't really have a place to put your feet. So it got uncomfortable. Now, going back to the metal forming thing, we've got a table at work made by a company called Pexto. And it's a metal forming table. It's called a stake table. And it's called that because it holds stake dollies, or post dollies as some people refer to them as. Anyway, it's roughly the same size, a 3x5 or close to it. The legs are steel. It's got 2 steel storage shelves under it. The top is a laminated hardwood with angle iron edging that runs the length of it, and 2 stake plates on either side of the table. I would like to have something like that, but they're antique, they're really expensive, they're hard to find, and I don't know, it's just kind of not doable. I do have a lot of 2x4s though that are taking up space in my garage. So if I could find a use for those, that'd be great. So the plan is to take 2x4s and kind of mimic this Pexto table, but I don't want to build a steel base or anything. I just want to use 2x4s. So did a lot of searching videos and blogs and stuff like that, and tried to come up with something that I thought would work best for my application, and did a little sketch just so I had an idea of how many 2x4s it was going to take, how many screws and stuff I was going to need. So anyway, all right. Now I'm starting with the tabletop. I want a laminated top just like the Pexto table. To get a top that's 3 foot wide, it's going to take 24 boards. I don't have a joiner, nor do I have access to one, so I'm just using my old table saw to shave a 1/2 inch off of each end of the board, and when these are glued up, I'll have a top that is 3 inches thick. All right, here's the legs. Now the tabletop is now 3 inches, and the legs are going to slide up into it. So what I've done is I've come down 3 inches from the top, and I have marked my holes for the top cross piece and for the bottom cross piece. All right, same thing on the short pieces, on the short side-to-side pieces. Mark my holes. These are going to screw into the table legs. All right, let's get some holes. Here's one of the 2 table leg assemblies. These run the length of the table. Now I've got another one on the stand, and I'm in the process of attaching the short side boards. although I hadn't planned to do this, once I got the stand together, I kind of felt like I needed to add a couple of screws to each end just to increase the rigidity of the stand. Okay, so we've got the base done, and now we're moving on to the lower shelf. Now, I had thought about doing just a piece of plywood or whatever, but I really didn't want to do that. I didn't want to have to go buy more wood, and I had plenty of 2x4s. So, but I wanted to do it like this because the lower shelf usually collects a lot of dirt. And I was hoping something like this would kind of eliminate that. It'd give us less surface area for the dirt and debris and stuff to collect. So anyway, cut every one of these 21 inches because that's the space that we have in between the legs is 21 inches. Now, where is my, okay. If you saw the video that I did when I built the wooden jack stands or the wheel cribs or whatever you want to call them. Anyway, I had made a little sheet metal drill template, and then this is it. I had drilled the holes diagonally apart from one another. I know it's hard to see with the light glaring. Anyway, and I used that so that the holes were in the same place on all the 2x4s. That way those 2x4s could be interchanged. They could go in anywhere. So I just took that template and I added an extra hole. Yeah, you can see it. Them two. Okay, and what I'm going to do, this will locate my screw holes for these bottom 2x4s, and every one of them will be in the same place. So whenever this is screwed down and you look at it, all the screw holes should be in a straight line. At least that's the plan anyway. Okay, got all the pilot holes drilled for the bottom shelf. Now I've measured this out, and I roughly need just it's not roughly, I need just a touch more than 1.5 inches. Now 2x4 is 1.5 inches. I've got a scrap piece, so I'm going to set that there as a spacer. And then I'm taking my template again, my sheet metal template, which is 18 gauge, and I'm just going to stick it in there. And that's going to give me just enough spacing to fit all the boards. So what I'm going to do is I start on one side, make sure it's flush on the edge. And I'm just taking a countersink bit. I'm going to move this spacer, this template over to the other side. Countersink these other two and continue on. All right, now that that's done, I picked up this oak dowel at Lowe's, and I'm going to glue it in all these holes. I'm just squirting a little glue into the holes. Not a lot, doesn't take a lot. Then I'm taking my palm sander, and I'm just gonna bevel this in just a little bit. Give it a slight taper just so it goes in the hole easier. I'm just going to hammer it in. Okay, now I'm taking my flush cut saw. There we go. assemble the tabletop. Now the milled surface, that's going to be the top. That's going to be our work surface. Okay, and what I'm doing is I'm taking some glue, and I don't have any clamps. So what I'm doing is I'm putting down some glue, and then I'm screwing these together. First I'll set them together. I'll make sure the ends feel like they're flush. Okay, now I'm gonna rotate it down and lay that milled surface down on the stand so that all the boards are flush, okay? Now I'm gonna tilt it back up, and I'm gonna drill some pilot holes for my screws. Just gonna do a couple just to get it together. Okay, now I'm going to come back and I'm going to put screws in about every 8 inches or so. I mean, nothing exact, I'm just guessing. And once all the pilot holes are drilled, then I'll come back and put the screws in. Okay, once I get the screws in, I'm just going back and I'm marking on top of the board where the screws are at. And it just kind of gives me a reference. That way when I put the next board on, I don't, run a screw into those. And I'm thinking about adding something to the top of the table, and I don't want to end up getting into the screws. And you can see I'm putting the screws in the top and the bottom. All right, so we got 4 boards together. On the 5th board, I have to do something different. I have to make a pocket for the table legs to come through. So I'm going to take one of the boards that I've milled, and I need to cut a board. I need to cut it 39 inches. That's going to go in the center. And then our pocket will be for the table legs. And then these 2 pieces on the end, those will be 7 inches. So let me get that set up. I got to cut 2 boards like that. So we've got the 39-inch board cut and the 2 7-inch boards. Okay, what I'm going to do is I just got some scrap pieces of 2x4. These are going to represent the legs. And what I'll do is I'll take these 7-inch ones, I'll flush them to the edge, take the scrap piece, stick it in there, do the same thing over here, get this one flush to the edge, put this scrap piece in, and anyway, all right, now I'm going to glue that, screw it, and keep assembling. Okay, the tabletop has officially been put together. It has been glued and screwed. On this last board, since the screws are exposed, I spaced them. I made sure to space them evenly, and I used the countersink bit, and I'll be putting a wooden dowel rod in those as well. Okay, turning our attention back to the base, I want to remove these legs, and I also want to polish the bolts. And while I've got it apart, I want to do some sanding, and then we'll get it ready for staying. Polishing these bolts is a multi-step process. Now I've got 2 different types. I've got just a regular bolts. This is a 3/8 16 and a lag bolt. They're both stainless. I've already said that. Anyway, you can see this is just the bolt. It doesn't look bad, but I mean it's got a print on it. Here's the lag bolt. Same thing. It's not as much. But still, I want that gone. Now, I went ahead and did one. It hasn't been polished yet, okay? This is just sandpaper. And let me rotate this down. Okay, here's the before, and here's the after. Again, this is just sandpaper. So, and once you hit that on a polishing wheel, it'll look really nice. But here's how you do it. You just chuck your bolt up in a drill, Need an air hose and a die grinder. I'm starting off with an 80 grit sanding disc. You gotta make sure you have your safety glasses and ear protection. Hold down the trigger and okay, there's what it looks like after just hitting it with the 80 grit disc. Next, going to be using one of these. Now, trying to shade it so you can see. That doesn't do a whole lot, but it gets the majority of the real harsh scratches out of it. Now, move on to a DA with some 80 grit. Now I know I was using an 80 grit sanding disc, and now I'm going back to an 80 grit DA paper. This is not as harsh as the sanding disc. All right, it's just the same thing, repeat. DA is not near as annoying as a die grinder. Now I'm moving on to a sheet of 180. Now on to a sheet of 320. Okay, done with the DA now. I'm going to move on to the finer grits. I've got them laid out here. I've got 600, 800, 1000, 1500, and 2000. Okay, I'm just going to hold the paper down and, well, spin the bolt. You want to kind of try to hold the drill up against your body so it doesn't move around, and you want to try to, the drill spinning clockwise, you want to try to keep the pressure on the top half of the bolt. If you get over here or over here, it starts to run around. So anyway, okay, now let's move on to the 800. And I'm rocking it back and forth because I want to get from the middle all the way to the edge. You can see already that's just after 800. Now 1000. And 15. Now the 2000. Sometimes it helps too to pick the paper up and just helps get right on the edge, and it helps to get dead in the middle as well. Okay, not too bad for just sandpaper. Again, once I hit that on the polishing wheel, it'll look like a mirror. Okay, so I'm in the process of building a sled to level up the tabletop. At least I think it's called a sled anyway. You know, you put the router on the 2 pieces of angle iron and slide it back and forth and it'll level it up. If you don't know what I'm talking about, just start searching woodworking videos. You'll run across it pretty quick. But before I do that, I want to put in these 1/4 inch plates. Well, I don't want to put them in. What I want to do is mark where they're going to go. And all these marks that you see here, this is where I screwed the boards together. So there's a screw at every mark. And these plates, they're 1/4 inch thick. And what I want to do is actually I want to cut holes in these plates so that I can put some post dollies or whatever, any kind of tooling. I can just build a base for it, whether it's a bench vise. I can build a base with just a square knob on it, and it would slide into a square hole. Anyway, that's the plan. But anyway, so what I did was, I looked at where the screws are at, and I wanted to get these as close to the center as I could, and figured out where I could drill my holes for these to mount these and not interfere with any screws that are inside the tabletop. So I went ahead and did that. I got those marked and I got the holes drilled in the 2 pieces of plate. The other one will go on the other side there. And I'm going to go ahead and drill my pilot holes for these, and then I'm going to finish this sled contraption and get this top leveled off. The top, I don't have the lag bolts in, and these bolts are loose. I'm going to leave the top loose because I'm hoping it'll make it a little easier to slide the tabletop on. The bottom, it's tight, and I'm going to, now that the bottom's tight, I'm going to flip this over, and I've got some casters I'm going to put on. All right, here's the casters that I'm going with. This is a 4-inch caster, meaning that the wheel is 4 inches. Overall height is a little over 5, I think maybe 5 1/4 or something. And I took that into consideration whenever I was making the base. I factored that into the overall height of the table. I got these off Amazon. They're cheap. I think for 4, it was 30 bucks. If you've ever priced casters, you know how expensive they are. So I thought this was a fairly good deal. At least I think it is right now anyway. It's supposed to hold, or they are supposed to hold 2,300 pounds. Anyway, I just went with some regular lag bolts. I didn't go with stainless since it's on the bottom. I just went with a zinc plated. So I'm gonna get these set on here and get holes drilled and get these top bolts tightened up. I'm going to get the lag bolts in. And, yeah, I know. And then I'm going to sand the top. And get ready to sand. Now, it's time to do something with these plates. The plan with these plates is I want to make a pocket so that, I can fit a stake dolly in. Also, any kind of tool that would need to mount on a bench, I can just make a fixture for it to sit in the pockets. Example, I have my eye on a bench top English wheel. And what I could do is just build a base for it that would sit inside the pocket. So anyway, whenever I need it, I just lift it up, set it on. Same thing, you could do that with bench vise or whatever. But that's that's the plan. Okay, so what I'm going to use to do that is I've got a scrap piece of 2-inch tubing. It's thick wall, it's 3/16. So the inner measurement is 1 inch and 5/8. Now it's a little bigger than what I was wanting, but I'm going to make it work. Anyway, so I've laid out, a 2-inch square on the plate. Okay, you see this piece of tubing has a very big radius. Okay, now I don't want to just cut a perfect square and then set this down in it and weld it up, because on the corners, I'll have a pretty big gap. So I want to actually cut that radius into my plate. So how to figure that is you need to measure off from where the radius starts and measure over to where the radius ends. And you can set that on a speed square, set it on here, and then measure over to where the radius stops. And that's at 3/8 of an inch. So if you have a 3/8 radius, then your full circle would be 3/4. So if I take a 3/4 inch drill bit and drill in each corner, now that'll cut the radius into my plate, and then I'll just have to cut my straights. I guess hopefully that makes sense. You'll see. If it doesn't, you'll see in just a second. Okay, so let me show you what this looks like. Okay, you can see I've laid out my square. And then since I know I need a 3/4 inch drill bit, I've just measured over 3/4 of an inch. And so laid out some little 3/4 inch squares in each corner, and then mark the center of those with an X. And I just drill those out, and then all I have to do is just make the cuts on the straights. All right, Okay, I got the 3/4 inch holes drilled. Now all that's left to do is to cut the straights. On this side here, I did run into a screw. I knew that was going to happen. I haven't done the other side yet, but the other plate yet. But anyway, so far on this side, just one screw. That's not that bad. Not real sure how I'm going to work around it yet, but I'll figure it out. The metal stuff is done. The end caps have been cut and fit. The plates, the square tubing has been welded in. They've been fit. Now I can pull this stuff back off. I'm going to sand over the top one more time, and it should be ready for some staying. Okay, so I cleaned up the metal pieces. I sanded them down, and then I sprayed some of this, some Rust-Oleum Satin Clear, and that's just to give it a little bit of protection and keep it from rusting. And anyway, I really like the look. I think it turned out awesome. Now it's just time to attach these to the table, and it'll be done finally.